Welcome back to the Nuance Needed podcast. I'm Amanda White, and I am so excited to have Jenny Wallace here, who is the author of 2 New York Times bestselling books, Never Enough and Mattering, which we are here to talk about today. How are you doing today, Jenny?
I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So your book, Mattering, it really is such a breath of fresh air. I really feel like, and I think people have said this to you, and it was in even reviews, but like you took something that I knew about as a hypothetical sort of, it's like you identified the water that we swim in is sort of how I feel. And it's so simple. It's this concept that like mattering in our life is important, but it's, the way you explain it truly like reoriented something in my brain. And I just wanted to hear you talk about your discovery, because I know it sort of reoriented things for you as well as a journalist.
Very much. So I was researching my first book, Never Enough, about achievement culture and when it becomes toxic. And I was looking at what are some of the causes and what are some of the solutions to achievement culture. And perfectionism is one of the root causes. And actually, one of the leading psychologists for perfectionism, his name is Gordon Flett. He's in Canada. I was reading his research on mattering and listening to it. And it was, the only way I could describe it, I was sitting at the desk where you are catching me right now, listening and reading about it and feeling this transcendent experience. This idea that this is what I have been grasping for. This is what is missing in the modern world today. It used to be here. It used to be baked into everyday life, and it's no more. And so I agree with you. Mattering helps all of us depersonalize what we're going through, right? When we are experiencing these feelings, these emotions, it's very easy to personalize it. But what mattering does is it helps you zoom out and put into context why you're feeling the way you are. That to me was what was the most helpful, was really being able to zoom out and saying, oh, it's not necessarily that we have a psychological problem. We have a sociological problem that we are all contending with. And this has been a change that has been rapidly unraveling our sense of connection and engagement and purpose and mattering. It's both a diagnosis, but it's also the solution.
Yes. And I think it's so helpful because I talk a lot in my work about the importance of values, and we need to live a life that's in alignment with our values, and how that, I think people talk about purpose a lot. And I think while that's amazing, and I am a big believer in purpose, I think that purpose is sort of harder to control. And I love, can you talk a little bit more about the differences between purpose and mattering and why one versus the other?
Yeah, so to zoom out a little bit more, mattering is what researchers call a meta need, or an umbrella term that captures and overlaps with other needs like purpose, like connection, like meaning, like belonging. But mattering goes deeper. So you can belong to the accounting department in your work, you could belong to a neighborhood, a mom's group, a classroom, even a family, and not feel like you matter to the people there. You can have a deep sense of purpose in your work. You can really be purposeful, but if no one is saying that your actions are making a difference, if no one is helping you connect to your impact, you will ultimately burn out and disengage. I agree with you on purpose, and I agree with you that purpose is great, and purpose is a profound experience when you find it. But what I have found is the way to purpose is actually living a purposeful life, which is centered on mattering. I should define the way I talk about mattering, which is feeling valued for who you are deep inside, away from your accomplishments, away from how you look, away from your materialistic goods. So for who you are deep inside and having a chance to add value back to the world around you, to your family, your friends, your colleagues, even yourself. In the search for stories for this book, I thought, what are the jobs that are just so obviously purposeful? And I thought firefighters, of course, they risk their lives to save ours. What I didn't know until researching this book is that firefighters are really struggling with very high rates of disengagement and burnout, and also PTSD. And much of it is rooted in the fact that they are constantly exposed to secondary trauma. But another part of it is because firefighters are disconnected from their impact. What I mean by this is firefighters are the first to arrive at the scene of a car accident or a medical emergency, and then the EMS takes over, rushes the person to the hospital, and firefighters never know what happened next. Did the woman they extracted from the burning car ever walk again? Did the man that they revived from his heart attack during a run ever make it out of the hospital? And so this fire chief named Greg in North Charleston, South Carolina, created a system to change that. He tracked the outcomes of rescues so his firefighters could know when their actions saved a life or eased someone's suffering. Because in order for us to stay purposeful and engaged in our work, in order for our work to feel meaningful, we need to connect to our impact. And it's not just at work that we need to connect to our impact. We need to connect to our impact in our everyday personal lives. And what I've come to believe is that we have so much input coming at us and so much output being demanded of us that we often just need to go through life on autopilot just to get through the day and our to-do list. But what happens when we do that is we neglect to connect to our own impact and to connect to the impact that others have. And so I think about how we don't close the loop. A friend offers a piece of advice, we take it, something great happens, and we forget to follow up and say, you know that advice you gave me last week? I took it, and here is what happens. For us, it's easy for us to disconnect from our impact. We're wired with a negativity bias, which means we are more prone to remember the negative things in our lives than the positive ones. They're stickier. And so it's easy to just gloss over a kind text or an email that somebody says, you know, your words really changed my life, or we are just so busy. So connecting to our impact is a way of living a more purposeful life.
Yeah, I love that too, because I think that one thing your work does a great job of talking about is that I think purpose sometimes is a big word, and people are like, I need to excavate myself to find my purpose, and I will be satisfied and fulfilled and happy finally when I find the exact right thing for myself to do. And then people feel unfulfilled because they have this like unrealistic expectation, I think, that something out that if they're not fulfilled, it's an external problem. And that's a pretty high bar to feel like you have to find the exact right thing you were made to do, compared to when you talk about mattering, you can matter in all sorts of areas of your life. It doesn't have to be career. Your purpose doesn't need to be a mom or to be a partner. That could be a way you matter, but it also feels to me very like we can spread out our values a bit more. It's not that purpose, I think, sometimes can create this pressure that is your sole purpose in life. You need to put everything in there. And I think about myself as like a pretty high achieving person who's struggled when things don't go well. And it's one of the best things that's happened to me is becoming a parent and actually feeling like I matter in other areas of my life. So if something isn't going as I hoped in one area, I still have purpose or mattering in other areas.
I think that is so true. What I love about mattering, as it's defined by this great researcher, Isaac Prolotensky, is that we matter across different domains. That for us to feel a true sense of mattering, it is mattering to ourselves, mattering to our family, to our colleagues, to our friends, to our wider community, and adding value back to those various domains. So it's almost like having a mattering portfolio. So if work isn't going well, then lean into the other domains to build up your resilience so that you could get through the struggles at work. Or if you're struggling, with a child at home, lean into other domains like mattering to friends and feeling valued by friends. That's what gives us resilience, the resilience that we get from relationships. And so I absolutely agree with you that one of the most protective things we can do is to feed the different domains of our life that build a meaningful life.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it also seems like with mattering, it like, I don't know, I kept thinking about third spaces. And I know you talk about this in the book, right? Of how with the decline of third spaces, like I think about this a lot, funnily enough, as like clubs, right? Have you heard that like, right, young people don't go to clubs anymore? Clubs are shutting down post-COVID. That was such like a core part of like my millennial like growing up was dancing with friends at clubs, but I digress. And how that's changed a lot. But it's like the decline of third spaces also has this impact where then people don't show up, then it's harder to show up because less people show up. Like I think about it in terms of if there are less clubs, then it's less of a norm. Then the culture changes where it's like weird if you go. Then if you don't have a good experience, you're less likely to go again because you don't have other reference experiences. And it's sort of like a downward spiral. Like I think or like coffee shops, right? If the coffee shop culture is changing and people aren't going, then less people are going to go and then it's a downward spiral. And I was thinking about this with mattering also. What do you see as the relationship between the two?
Oh, I fully agree with you. I think the loss of third places, third spaces, has really eroded our mattering. So sociologists call the first place the home, the second place the workplace, and the third place are, as you were pointing out, the coffee shops, the clubs, the restaurants, the bowling alleys, the church basements. And so when we do that, mattering, at least when I was growing up, and really when you were growing up, it started to shift. But if I'm a Gen Xer, in the 70s, mattering, these signals that we mattered, that we were valued, that we added value, were baked into everyday life. And so we knew our neighbors. We went to the same deli. We were recognized there. These were places where we got these small little investments into our mattering. When those leave, so I think that's one thing. I think overhead, the prices of things, have made it very hard to keep these third places alive. But the other thing that's happened, and this is a side effect of tech, Silicon Valley's main goal is for the user to feel a frictionless experience. So they want you to go on the app, whatever app it is, press a button and get your groceries. Press a button, get your shirt delivered to you, et cetera, et cetera. This has, I believe, it's certainly I've noticed it in my own life, made us less tolerant for friction. So waiting in line, something being out of stock, these things, waiting in line to order your coffee as opposed to ordering it on your app, zooming in with your earbuds in, grabbing it and going. So this efficiency has lowered our tolerance for friction. And what friction is, what I've come to realize, is that it's in the friction that we build a meaningful life. Now, I'm not saying friction of having an abusive friendship or abusive relationship. I'm talking about the everyday friction of having to get off of our couch, get dressed, go out in the rain to meet a friend at a cafe to hear about their struggles. The friction that maybe the conversation will be awkward because you haven't seen them in a while or because they're going through something hard. It's uncomfortable because you don't feel like going out in the rain. Can't you just text them and catch up that way? But what we do when we retreat and we isolate ourselves is we lose the signals that we need to make us feel valued. And so third places were just a real natural place where we would get those signals day in and day out, and we don't have them anymore. Small talk matters. Small talk is a kind of social glue that keeps a society going. And I know small talk, a lot of people feel uncomfortable about it now. It's necessary. There's actually, I talk about in the book, this supermarket chain, Jumbo, in Europe, where the owners of Jumbo were trying to solve for the loneliness epidemic. And what they did was they instituted slow checkout lanes where cashiers would take extra time to chat with elderly customers. Not only did the customers feel like they mattered, those cashiers felt like they mattered too. They were playing a significant role in buffering against loneliness. I think the other thing that's come out of COVID is that we've become very comfortable, way too comfortable, canceling on people. And I often say to people when they tell me that their friendships have hollowed out, I say, are you a good friend? Are you someone who shows up? Are you committed to your friendships? And it stops them and they say, no, yeah, I am somebody who cancels at the last minute. Well, guess what happens? And again, I'm not perfect. This is a practice that I am working on. But I have made a commitment to myself that I do not cancel plans anymore unless I am sick. And what that does is it sends the signal to the other person that you are trustworthy, that when you say you are going to do something, you follow through and you say it. So if your friendships are feeling hollow, if your friends aren't opening up to you, it feels superficial, start committing regularly to your friends, and you will find that that signal will send the signal of trust, which is the basis of all deep, nourishing conversations and relationships.
And when you show up, like you're saying, like they matter. They matter in your life. You matter to them. It is this like mutual confirmation. I love that. And that was what I was, I think, most struck with by in your book, Jenny, is I think a lot of books that are written about the erosion of third spaces from a sociological perspective or problems with culture sort of stop there. And it's just like, okay, the problem is the culture. And then, and this is just me as a therapist, I'm left with, okay, what do we do? How do we help? What are the solutions? You really talk about how this is also the solution, though, is that showing up it's not just like, okay, third spaces are ruining this for us and like there's nothing we can do and we just have to survive. You're also like calling to, let's all step up together. This is maybe not a solvable problem, but this is something we can make a real difference in. And I just found that so refreshing as a therapist, because I'm always trying to walk the line between acknowledging the very real things that have happened in our culture, but also trying to talk about how we do have impact. Because, right, I'm someone who's in recovery from an addiction, and so much of my recovery was like doing things I didn't want to do. It was showing up. It was going to a basement in a church that I didn't want to be at, and being told by people and actually feeling like my presence did matter. And they would say, like everyone who's here, like there's a lot of problems with AA that I've critiqued over the years, but like that community piece of we are here for each other, we make a difference, these norms are baked in of every person here makes a difference. You never know who will share or be touched by what you share. That was such an invisible thing that really pushed me forward in recovery. And without it, I don't know if I would have gotten sober.
All right, everybody, gather around because Mother's Day is coming up, and I have the plan for how you are going to spoil your mom, a mom that is important to you, a mom of your friend, basically any mom that you would like. I'm going to give you the plan, okay? You are going to go to Cozy Earth, and you are going to get her literally anything. But ideally, the combo that I've come up with for my mom is we are going to do robes, slippers, sheets, and a blanket, okay? I am going to wrap my mom in the softest, coziest pajamas and sheets and robes and slippers that I have ever personally tried in my life. I just think the reason I'm putting this like package together like this is because I think it is so special for the women in our life who work so hard and give so much and rarely think of themselves, and they need to be thinking of themselves more, to give them this gift, whatever you end up getting them, right? To let them know that they need a moment to themselves. And they need a moment to rest and chill, and to do that in some of the most comfortable sheets, pajamas, blankets, robes, and slippers I have literally ever used in my life. So with that said, I also want to let you know, you get a 100-night sleep trial with any of the products. So you can try it for 100 nights and decide at any point in there that you don't like it and send it back. But also, if you do decide you like it, these products are covered with a 10-year warranty. You get 10 years of use out of these products. Your mom will thank you for this cost-saving measure gift, okay? So with all that said, I have a special gift for you. If you use code NUANCE at checkout, you get 20% off. That's code NUANCE, NUANCE, because home starts with mom. Can't wait to hear what you guys think.
In researching the book, I spoke with a group of men who were in AA. And they were so open and wonderful with me and talked about how AA completely changed their life. And it wasn't even about the addiction, which was part of it, but it was about how it created a scaffolding that helped them build deep relationships. And when I think, so I'm not intimately familiar with AA, but what I've heard about AA is that it has the ingredients of mattering. Mattering has specific ingredients that researchers have been studying since the 80s. I think about it in a framework called SAID, S-A-I-D, which means we feel significant, appreciated, invested in, and depended on. So feeling significant is when I would interview people for the book, I would say, tell me about a time when you felt like you mattered. It was never winning an award. It was never the promotion at work. It was the small moments. It was someone remembering their name after they'd just met once. It was the neighbor coming over with a pot of soup when they were sick. It was small. It was a friend checking in after a particularly rough week. That's when we feel significant, when we feel prioritized in someone's mind. Appreciated is, the way I think about it, is appreciating the doer behind the deed. Meaning, let's say you have a friend who's always planning fun mom's nights out or whatever it is. Instead of saying to them, thanks for planning such a fun night for us, you can say something that feeds their mattering. Because of you, we are such a closer group. I hope you know how much we appreciate all of your efforts. You're like a mini community builder here, and we are so lucky to have you. Invested in is having people in your life, like people in AA, like people at work, who are invested in your goals, in your well-being. It is allowing people also to make those investments into your life. So it's not just investing in others, but it's also opening yourself up to that investment as well. That was something that I personally struggled with for many years, particularly as a new mother, feeling like I needed to do it all myself. But what I've realized now, after studying mattering now for 7 years, is that when I don't reach out for help, not only do I deny myself the help I deserve, I also deny my friend the chance of mattering, of letting her know how much she matters to me. And then the last one, the last ingredient, is feeling dependent on. It is believing that there are people that you can rely on and that there are people who rely on you. So the world would be less good if you weren't here. It provides the kind of psychological safety we all crave to know we're not going through this world alone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I would love to think of a way of everyone should have access to an AA group. Right? You shouldn't have to have an addiction to have a place where you belong, where you just show up as you are, flaws and all, and you are welcomed. It's bringing tears to my eyes thinking about it. It is, what a rare, rare space to have.
Mm-hmm. We keep circling around it, but it just feels like it cuts the legs off of this intense, and I get why you discovered it after writing Never Enough, because we all are searching for wanting to feel enough, and we are searching for it in the job promotion, in more, in, external things. And I certainly fall into that trap a lot. And I just love that this is such a breath air that kind of cuts through that. of this is something we all have access to because you don't need to be the best. You don't need to be great. You can just matter to someone in your life. I loved the story you told in the book about the sanitation worker. Could you share a bit about that?
Yeah, he's wonderful, Rayhan. So Rayhan was a sanitation worker, and his colleagues were really invested in him. Rayhan had had the dream of going to college, but he didn't have the grades and he didn't have the money. But his colleagues really, his coworkers really rallied around him. They pushed him to go and apply to colleges. He got into to a local college. And again, with the support of all the many people in his life, what he calls his corner men, because he was a former boxer. So for those of you who don't know about boxing, because I certainly didn't until I met Rayhan, that all boxers credit their success to their corner men, that they are not in the ring alone. They have somebody, they are literally in the corner of the ring, there to wipe up their bloody eyes, to give them tough love when they need it. They know they're not going through the fight alone. And Rayhan had that. He went through college, he got great grades, he went on to Harvard Law School, where he discovered custodians and other staff workers who were feeling the way he felt when he was a sanitation worker, which was a bit invisible in his uniform. He was proud of his work as a sanitation worker, except people ignored him. It was like he didn't exist when he was in his uniform. And he was seeing that with the custodians at Harvard Law School. And so he created a club, a kind of movement at Harvard Law School to really acknowledge and appreciate the people there who keep the school going. So it is this idea of mutual reliance, mutual interdependence, which is bizarrely countercultural in a world that, we've become so hyper individualized. We talked about the villages disbanding. We have become these sort of one family villages in our homes. But that does a disservice to all of us. It does a disservice to caregivers in particular, who are stretched beyond what anyone should be stretched to. But anyway, Rayhan built this interdependent web for himself, and then he was motivated to go on and build that web for the people who worked at Harvard Law School.
I love that. I mean, it's such a touching, incredible story in the book. And it also just makes me think about how often, and I'll call myself out on this, like we don't think the effort is worth it because we're like, it's not going to make a difference. It's not going to succeed, right? I think about, I don't know, let's say you start a book club or something. I think a big barrier sometimes is you're like, well, no one's going to come. No, it's not, even if we get it a few times, it's not going to become anything. It's not worth it, or it's not even worth making friends because, it's so hard to keep friends these days and I'm so busy and everyone's so busy. So why bother? And I love that if we can flip it towards mattering, it becomes less about the outcome of the success of the book club or how long you're friends with that person. And instead, we're starting to value every time we're there. My life really changed a bit when I live in a neighborhood. I am a notoriously annoying person who doesn't like small talk. So I used to really avoid all of my neighbors. And I started doing this thing where I started saying to myself, I'm going to actively seek out positive interactions in my neighborhood. Because I used to be like, well, I'm not going to be friends with these people. I don't like some of them. I don't have the same political beliefs as them. I don't want to. But when I stopped looking at it from this goal of that was the purpose, and instead I started being like, I want to enjoy a walk in my neighborhood more, it totally transformed the conversations I'm willing to have, even though there's one woman who I love and I know nothing about her, but I think her dog is really cute. That positive moment, I've started thinking of collecting them as gems.
I love that. And what you're doing in those moments is you are building trust. We are living in a world where people do not trust each other anymore. And so what you're doing in those small interactions is you are saying, I'm trustworthy. I'm here if you need something. So many people don't know their neighbors. There's this great program, Neighboring 101 in Missouri, at a Missouri Extension School. And I went and I spoke with them about, neighboring. I think that is such a low-hanging fruit for feeling a sense of mattering. Matter to your neighbors. There was a book that somebody put on my radar, and one of the lines in the book was, this was a book written by a minister, and he said, imagine if what Jesus meant was to literally love your neighbor. Not just love your neighbor like yourself, but literally love your neighbor. It's low-hanging fruit. Just start. It used to be normalized. You start normalizing it. And to go back to your book club, so about 2 years ago, a group of women were getting together once a month to read an article. Low bar.
Love it.
Right?
That's such a good idea.
It's so easy. So it was, some people, whoever's hosting it. So we hosted in our kitchens. It's very relaxed. I don't cook. Most of the women cook. I'll order in. And we sit at the kitchen table, totally informally. The house doesn't have to look immaculate. It's all about what happens at the kitchen table. We sit, we talk about the article, and then it spills over into other areas of our lives. And it's a group of about 6 to 8 of us. No, like 6 or 7 of us. And when one person is missing from the group, we all feel it. We all miss her. We are all critical to the success of that group. And the bar is one article. And and a commitment. We have committed. We are busy professional women. Every woman in that group works, but we commit to a lunch together once a month to talk about an article. And then we have a texting chain, that keeps us going throughout the rest of the month. But that's it. And I can tell you, there's a lot of trust in that group. We are a lockbox. We say things to each other that we don't even necessarily say to friends we've known for decades. We open up there. We have built the trust because we always show up.
What do you say? Because I think this is a big challenge right now for people who say, I hate my neighbors. I have different political beliefs than my neighbors. I don't want to trust my neighbors because I know how they voted and I don't like them.
So here's a challenge that I would love to give to that person, because it's a challenge that I'm trying to live in my own life. And again, I don't always meet the challenge, but I aspire to it. And I want you to, if you're that person listening, I want you to think about your neighbor wearing an invisible sign around their neck that says, tell me, do I matter? All of us are wearing that invisible sign. We all want to know that we matter. And what I have found in the research is that when we talk about political extremes, those are often rooted in this unmet need to feel like I matter. And so when we don't feel like we matter, we could either withdraw, become anxious, depressed. There was a study that I cover that talked about suicidal men, and the 2 words they used most often to describe their suffering was useless and worthless. Those are the words of not mattering. Or we can act out. Road rage, people, writing horrible things online, political extremes, shouting, rage, anger, school shootings, workplace shootings. These are desperate attempts to say, oh, I don't matter. I'll show you I matter. If you can meet that need, there was a story that I begin in the book. I was in a Harlem train station on my way out of town for a reporting trip. And I ducked into a bodega, and I overheard an exchange between the bodega owner and a customer. And he said, when I saw these clementines in the market this morning, I knew I had to bring them in for you. And the customer was like, thank you for being so kind and always thinking of us. And I felt so warmed by that exchange. Fast forward, I'm on my way home from that trip. I'm on the Metro North train, and all of a sudden, a young man comes storming in. His chest was heaving with anger. He was shouting at everyone on the train. He had just had words with somebody on the platform. That person was gone, but his anger was still there. And then all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see a conductor walk up to the man and approached him very gently. And he said, is everything okay? Do you need anything? Come, take a seat. The seat by the window is nice. Come sit down. Do you have your ticket? Where are you going? And he spoke to the man, to the person behind the rage. And what the conductor did in that moment was that he met that young man's rage and anger with, you matter. I see you, I hear you, you matter. And once he did that, just in those few words of kindness, the man's shoulders relaxed. And I find this myself when I'm on the phone with an operator. Oh my God, jury duty. So I had gone 2 years ago to serve, and then I got another letter for jury duty this week. And I'm like, guys, I was just there. So I called the number. The woman was so snarky with me on the phone, so obnoxious. And instead of being like, why are you being so obnoxious to me? I said, oh, you must be inundated with people like me calling all day long. You must be exhausted. How do you handle it? And it completely turned it around. I tuned in to what she was experiencing. I saw that, she felt like she was badgered all day long. I filled that need. You matter. Even though people are yelling at you, you matter. And it turned everything around. So we can all be, going back to the neighbor, we can all be the neighbor that can see beyond. We all have to matter. We've politicized mattering. But it's a deep human need that all of us have. It's like politicizing air and water. This is a basic human need, and we all need it. So be the neighbor, be the person. Make it a challenge for yourself to grow and see if you can be that person, to meet the person behind the rage.
I love that so much. It really reminds me of like parenting in a way of like how you parent, like when I'm my best version of myself as a parent, right? Like I can see beyond what my child is doing and see that they're struggling or frustrated and there's something under there. And yeah, I just love how you're talking about how like it's hard, right? It's hard, especially in this culture that says mattering doesn't matter and says that there's no point and you should save your energy and you should protect your peace and don't overinvest and all of the way that the culture has changed is a big challenge in this. And it's hard to give that mattering to people when you aren't giving it back.
Yes, it's very hard, but we can be the start of that upward spiral. We can be that person. And I think I should like step back and say, I think a couple of things have to happen before you can actually be that good neighbor that we're talking about. One, you have to matter to yourself. You have to, and this is something else that was really hard for me, particularly as a young mother of three. The idea of mattering myself, I'm the last on the list. But what I've come to realize is I do need, in order for me to show up and be my best self to my neighbor, to my kids, I need to find out what I need and meet my own needs. And so I have this little practice now that I do whenever I brush my teeth in the morning. I think about what is one small need that I need to fill today for myself so I can show up as my best self for myself and for the people who depend on me. So I would say, number one, start tuning into yourself and what you need, because it is very hard to be generous and kind and your best self if you yourself are starving of mattering. So that's number one. And then number two, we all need one or two or three people in our lives who we can lean on and open up to and not have to be always our best selves, who, this belief that we are not going through the world alone. There's one of my favorite studies in the book is two friends standing at the foot of a hill. Researchers asked them, how steep is the hill when they were together, and then asked them, how steep is the hill when they were alone? And when they were together, it was less steep. Friendships act like shock absorbers from the stresses of everyday life. And it's not that people don't have friends. It's that they often don't invest in those friendships so that they could be sources of support when they need them. And that, I think, was one of the most profound learnings in my research, was how critical it was for me as a mother to prioritize my resilience and my relationships, because my kids' resilience rests on my resilience, and my resilience, all of our resilience, rests fundamentally on the depth and support of our relationships. So relationships that deliver mattering to us. So before you can be the good neighbor, you need to matter to yourself. You need to have one or two people in your life who remind you of your worth when you are feeling like you're never enough. And then we can be our best selves. We can be our better selves. Let's put it that way.
I love this so much. I mean, I love how you talk about it across like all domains, whether it's a boss implementing this at their work, whether it's families, whether it's friends, dating, all of these things. Yeah, I really hope I'm just so inspired by your work. I'm so inspired by this conversation. And I love that there are clear things we can do. It doesn't always feel good or easy in the moment, but we can change the culture. We just have to all start showing up and taking small action together.
If you are somebody who's struggling with purpose right now, I think there's no greater purpose than being that mattering agent in society, being the person that is connecting the neighbors to each other, being the friend that initiates the plans for the group. To me, that is we need those connectors. We need that connective tissue that's gone missing. So if you are looking for a purpose, that's it. I mean, purpose, I have found the people that I interviewed for the book who were the most purposeful were people who were able to locate genuine needs in their neighborhoods, communities, the world, and then use their time, talent, or treasure to meet that need. So let's say there's a need that the neighbors don't know each other. Be the person who throws a block party this summer. And there are wonderful resources. Google up Block Party USA, and there's a whole template. There's another wonderful nonprofit called The Longest Table, which is such a fun idea where you create this huge long table with your neighbors and you all have a meal together. And there's a template for that. So be that person, be the connector. We need more of those in our society. And what you will find is that the fastest way to feel like you matter is when you show others in your world that they matter enough for you to show up.
Totally. And I think that's what people miss when we're just talking about what are we going to get at the end of this friendship or this event or this community or whatever. And it's what stops people because they say, well, I don't ever need my neighbors, so why would I bother investing? I'm not going to give what I'm not going to take. But what we're talking about is even in those small moments, you're actually creating something for other people and yourself.
Yes. You just notice how you feel when you make someone else feel like they matter. Notice how it comes back to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jenny. This was so incredible. Your book, Mattering, is out everywhere. Where else can people find your work, your research, all of that?
So you can find me on Instagram at Jennifer Wallace, or you can head over to my website, jenniferbwallace.com, and I have a monthly newsletter and an ambassador program, Mattering Ambassador Program, which is a free online community. So anyway, you can find out more on my website.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amanda.